Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm SM Hali presenting another edition of Defense and Diplomacy. Pakistan and India were carved out of the same subcontinent, and it was expected by our founding fathers that perhaps we will live in peace and we will be able to reach our true potentials. But unfortunately, due to various reasons, the rancor built between us, we have had to go to war 3 times and have been on the brink of numerous conflicts and wars. Unfortunately, the times are such that we need to pool our resources and make sure that we overcome poverty, deprivation and other problems which are faced by the masses, rather than spend our time, money and our limited resources on fighting each other. Is there a prospect for peace? To discuss that, we have invited 2 very eminent panelists. We have with us Reza-ul-Hasan, who is an Indian journalist, and we have with us Farrukh Pitafi, who is not only a Pakistani journalist but also hosts his own TV show and has a mind of his own. Welcome. Reza, very briefly, let's just touch upon some of the issues. Of course, there's a major breakthrough that Pakistan and India are going to finally play cricket, and Pakistan is going to be invited to India to do so. That is, of course, the news of the week. But how do you look at the other issues?
Well, you know, there has been a lot of positive movement as far as trade is concerned. There has been the resumption of talks, in the post-Mumbai scenario, and we've had a number of very good meetings. We have the foreign ministers meeting coming up sometime in September. So these are, again, small steps that are being taken by the 2 sides to bring things back on an even keel, to get things moving. I think trade, the normalization, is something that a lot of people are, have a lot of expectations from, because, as I was saying, if China and India with all their problems can have trade of almost $74 billion a year, I think frankly, it's ridiculous that Pakistan and India have trade of only about 2.2 or $2.5 billion a year. I think it's a ridiculous figure.
Indeed. Farrukh, you have an opinion
on
that?
Regarding cricketing diplomacy, I think this is a very welcome development. Cricket diplomacy we had in the past as well. But remember, in last 20 years, we have had too many false starts. Where we started, but then we starved, we bogged down, and we were not able to, benefit from it. This time, of course, as Reza is saying, Pakistan and India's trade breakthrough is great. That is a very impressive development, and if that continues, that will also work as a background CBM, confidence building measure. But we shouldn't forget that there are very serious issues that have brought the 2 countries to war many a times. This time it is quite opportune that we actually start negotiating and we do something substantial to actually curtail and to minimize those sticking points between the 2 countries. For example, Kashmir is a very big issue. And remember, there is a constituency of peace in this country, but there is even a bigger constituency for war, not only in Pakistan but India as well. I think in order to contain them, to curtail them, it is incumbent upon us that we actually build peace, and that peace should be irreversible. Kashmir is one thing. Then there is Siachen issue. Siachen we have recently visited also, and we have seen what kind of extreme situation our soldiers are fighting and Indian soldiers are placed over there in. It will be better that we start building peace over there, and we, as Reza put it, we reduce, or rather you put it, we reduce the resources which are actually being eaten up by confrontation, and then they should be redirected to developing our individual
In fact,
countries.
talking about Siachen, it's not just the resources, and there are fantastic resources, but the problem is the toll of human lives, and
Absolutely.
less from fighting, but more from the inclement weather.
So that is one thing, one aspect. Then you are polluting a natural resource of environment. We shouldn't be fighting over there, we should be preserving it. We already are heading towards a global warming situation where we perhaps should be preserving our glaciers and everything. That said, there are umpteen other issues as well that have to be taken care of. I think this time there are two governments in both the countries which are really pro-peace and pro-democracy. So why shouldn't we start building peace right now? Unfortunately, in the past, we have seen that in Pakistan, whenever we had dictatorships, peace with India was usually used as an alternative to legitimacy or democracy. In India, what we have witnessed recently is that peace building was actually used as an alternative to good governance or winning over the domestic support. I think this is about time that we realize that peace building is important for its own sake instead of being an alternative. And we start building it and we do something substantial for our coming generations. If we don't do it, we will keep on repenting.
Absolutely. Reza made a very important point about trade.
Yeah.
You see, why I see eye to eye with you, and I guess most of our viewers would too, the trade is something we are bringing in stakeholders who would ensure that for the benefit of their commercial value, they are going to try and have peace.
Well, I mean, just look at the news from day before yesterday. Pakistan's richest man, Mian Mansha, he openly talks about how he's applied to both Indian and Pakistani authorities to open 3 branches of the Muslim Commercial Bank in India. And frankly, I mean, the fact that it takes 65 years for, you know, the two countries to think about opening bank branches, again, to me, that's ridiculous. I mean, if you don't have infrastructure like bank branches, how are you going to do trade? So, I mean, the fact that someone like Mian Mansha, who's obviously, he's a hard-nosed businessman, now he's talking about putting his money, you know, on opening bank branches means that, you know, he's thinking very seriously about trade. There are, I mean, the funny part is Indian products are available in Pakistan, but at a fantastic markup because they're brought in from places like Dubai. It's about time, you know, we got rid of these middlemen who are sitting in Dubai earning fantastic profits and start doing trade and building stakeholders, you know, as you said.
Exactly, and vice versa, try and ensure that we have the products which are, you know, meeting the requirement of the Indian market and make an ingress over there.
Well, of course, when it comes to ISO benchmarks, I think Pakistan is trying to meet them, and hopefully when we export things over there, we will have some good quality products to introduce. But coming back to Mansha Saab and all that projects, recently when I visited India, I noticed that he has already invested there as well. I think it is criminal to keep on stopping people from investing, you know, for regional integration, because economically there is no alternative to regional integration in trade, in economy, because now the countries or the regions are fighting over trade. Europe has integrated already. It might be in deep blue sea, but still they are struggling to keep up. And perhaps the potential of this region is not being realized because these countries are always skeptical of each other's intentions, and perhaps they have not been able to benefit that much as was needed.
Exactly. Coming to solutions, you see, we need to learn from the case of Europe. They have had hundreds of years of war, enmity, and such terrible rivalry that, I mean, history books are full of them.
They fought a war called 100 Years' War. Yeah. They fought another war called 30 Years' War.
Well,
if they can do it.
I think my personal understanding is that, you know, one of the reasons why there was a lot of animosity on both sides is the generation that witnessed partition. I mean, my family, frankly, wasn't very badly affected by partition, and therefore, you know, I never grew up in an atmosphere where there was talk about Pakistan as the enemy country. But I have friends who were directly affected by the partition, and, you know, when you interact with that generation, there is a lot of animosity in a lot of people, and I think this is there on both sides of the border. But, you know, I mean, 65 years is a long time. Maybe that's the reason why, you know, now there is a fresh kind of thinking coming in.
Exactly, Reza. And Farrukh, you will probably bear me out that we need to bury the past and move on.
Sir, not only 47's past, right? There have been wars later in this between the two countries and as well, and we have to remember that has to be buried also. That bitter legacy also have to be buried. But the problem is that you cannot build lasting peace without taking into cognizance the bitter parts of reality as well. At this moment, I think umpteen of my own friends were lost in a couple of skirmishes that we had with India. But Pakistan at this moment is facing a lot of existential challenges. India will also be facing such kind of things. It is better that we start building peace so that that kind of thing is put on back burner. There are a couple of other things also important. For example, when you go to Kashmir, you realize that so many families are divided and they are uncomfortable. They're unhappy because they cannot meet their relatives. That peace was started, that dialogue or that bringing together the divided families.
Confidence building measure.
Let us not call it confidence building measure. It was hardcore peace. If you bring divided Kashmiris together, that will be a big, supporting factor in the entire peace process. Yes, sir.
And just adding to what he said, I mean, and this is something that Farrukh raised a little while earlier. The point is, besides the issues we are talking on, it's also important that we start looking at the issues that we are not talking on. Environment being one. I mean, there's no component.
He mentioned environment, of course, in the realm of Siachen, but it's a very serious international issue.
It's a serious issue. I mean, fine, internationally it's okay, but I mean, it's about time that India and Pakistan got their act together and started acting on environmental issues that are already, or if they are not already, they will affect both the countries in the near future. Another issue we are not talking on, but we are talking to each other, is Afghanistan. I mean, if there is a global meet where Pakistan is there on Afghanistan, then India is not there. If there is a meet where India is present for Afghanistan, Pakistan is usually not there. And there's hardly any interfacing between India and Pakistan. But if there are two countries which have serious reservations about Afghanistan, it's these two countries. So I find it very strange that Afghanistan is not part of the
Thank you very much for mentioning, bringing that up, because Afghanistan is perhaps even more important issue now than Kashmir itself, because that has been quite a sticking point between the two countries. And remember one thing, while we are talking about peace in Afghanistan or having stakes in Afghanistan, there's another larger issue here. That is the trade from Central Asia that we had theorized that it can be channeled through Pakistan or Iran. Iran has become a contentious issue. Otherwise, their Chabahar would have been quite beneficial.
Yes.
Right now, we have Gwadar. Gwadar has a lot of problems. It has not been humanly developed that much. Perhaps if we start working on building peace in Afghanistan and we come closer on our joint picture or how we visualize Afghanistan of tomorrow, perhaps we will be able to build the trade routes as well.
In fact, Farrukh, while you're talking about trade routes, there is another very important issue, which is energy. Both the countries need energy terribly, and look at TAPI. India is a co-signatory, Pakistan is a co-signatory, but you mentioned Afghanistan. Unless there is peace in Afghanistan, how can the energy from Turkmenistan come this way? India has backed out of the Pakistan-Iran pipeline for whatever reasons.
Yes.
We will not talk about it, but TAPI is a reality.
Yes.
But then that
and
can
TAPI has the backing of the Americans, so
well,
they're not averse to it.
No, they are not averse to it, but I really am skeptical about it. I think at this moment there are umpteen other projects.
Yes.
Come on, Central Asia is full of resources.
Pakistan
is full of resources.
If you look at some of the latest, kind of stuff that's coming out in the Indian media about Indian firms that are setting up refineries and petroleum projects close to the Pakistan border, I mean, almost everyone mentions that one of the reasons they're doing it is because they're looking at the Pakistani market. But on the other hand, Pakistan has very legitimate fears that, well, if we start buying energy from India, what happens if the tap is turned off? So these are issues that they have to discuss. But I mean, this is a place where a start could be made, energy and petroleum and electricity trade.
No, but you see, answering your question actually, because if I look at it as a question.
Trust deficit or what?
On trust deficit. You see, the important thing is that if you, what is sauce for the goose is also sauce for the gander. If we have projects like TAPI, where energy is being channelized to India through Pakistan, so it would be in the interest of Pakistan to make sure that nobody switches off the tap this side, if we are interested that the tap coming from that side is never closed.
I tell you something very out of, let us discuss something which is really out of box. In 1947, remember that the two forces from the two sides, Pakistan's army and India's army, were one. And there was a time when they wanted to divide it, the British wanted to divide it, and the military leaders actually were trying to refuse to divide the two because they thought that India and Pakistan have a collective security situation because they have threats from other places. Today, anybody can come, exploit the differences between India and Pakistan and get away with whatever they want in the region. For example, Afghanistan, India might have a stake, Pakistan might have a stake, but how come the US has an extended stake? We are accommodating everything foreign in the region because we are not that much comfortable with each other. Just consider a day when India and Pakistan are comfortable, when we can work together, what will happen? This region might not be colonized any longer. It might have a brighter future, not colonized by any foreigner. That means also the foreign terrorist not being used by anybody who has interests of his own and perhaps not that much beneficial to the region. And then there are human rights issues as well. In Afghanistan, we have seen unmitigated disaster of human rights. We have seen something similar in Pakistan as well. That kind of situation can also be stopped if we are friends, if we are strategic partners. I know it is a far cry. I know at this moment we are hardly anything more than uncomfortable neighbors or very bitter rivals.
I think the comfort level has, I think it has increased in the past few years. I mean, there have been some very, very good meetings between the two leaders. I mean, in fact, by all accounts, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh did develop a very good relationship with former Prime Minister Gilani.
In fact, they had a personal rapport.
Yes. So, I mean, of course, now we have this situation where the Pakistan government is virtually in the home stretch going towards elections. So whether the talks at this stage will be very.
But the point Farrukh made, you see, is very important. You see, talking about the mindset of the Pakistani military. Once upon a time, they used to look upon Afghanistan for strategic depth. I think it's high time we start looking for strategic depth to India.
Well, that's a very, it's a very, very
out
of the box kind of thinking.
And if you're talking about out of box, yes, this is the way forward.
Yeah, it is.
It is. I mean, a quieter border with India, which has been the case.
And vice versa. For India, it should have the confidence.
Absolutely.
Why the hell not? Actually,
absolutely, yes. Yeah. I mean, since you've had a ceasefire in Kashmir since 2003, I mean, why not, kind of build on that? And, I mean, if you have a quieter border here, then you can focus on the other problem that you have on the western side.
That is one thing. Yeah. And remember, whosoever is in the region from outside will have to one day leave. But India and Pakistan know one thing for sure, that we are going to be here.
Yeah, we can't
and we cannot change our borders, we cannot change our neighbors.
Exactly, you cannot change your neighbors.
Precisely. So why not actually start working with your neighbors rather than becoming, succumbing to foreign powers just in order to one up the other country or win over something.
True.
Yeah.
No, and you see, we were talking about Europe. You gave a very good example of China. But you see, we have so many other examples. ASEAN, for example, it's a success story.
Yes.
We have the framework of SAARC, but unfortunately, we have not been able to.
SAARC has been, for too long, it has been caught up in the rivalry between India and Pakistan. It hasn't lived up to its potential. It hasn't.
Never.
There was even talk in between of subgroupings within SAARC where minus India or minus Pakistan. But frankly, that's not going to work. And
Pakistan
now you have
India.
the advantage of having Afghanistan as part of SAARC. So, I mean, it's time to start building. And it's not, you can't do these things like having a SAARC regional electricity center in Islamabad and setting up some center in, in India. It's time to take tangible steps. You got to start working on things like SAFTA. You have to start implementing the ground rules for SAFTA and, let the benefits accrue to the people, not to the countries, to the people.
Exactly. So let's sort of wind up the way forward.
Right.
How would you look at it?
Well, humbly submitted, I would say that in the past, Pakistan and India both had some kind of identity problem with each other. Somehow Pakistan was viewed by certain circles within India as the undermining of India's own identity as a secular power. And Pakistan viewed India as a threat to its existence because they thought that someday they are going to go for Akhand Bharat or Greater Hindustan. Today, after so many developments, I think both countries realize that they are going to have borders, they are going to have their individual existence, and they are ready to respect each other. I think that said, perhaps we can build a future where we don't have such kind of existential issues with each other's existence or the survival, and where we can actually build up each other rather than pulling each other down. Even SC's example is great also. We have been, even though we were at loggerheads of late, but we have actually helped each other in UNSC also through votes and everything. Perhaps that can be, done or built.
One very, very brief comment from you for closing.
Yeah, well, I mean, one point that he referred to was about, how there is this fear in Pakistan that, in Pakistan has never been accepted by India. I think by and large, Indians now today accept Pakistan as a reality. They want to move on. One crucial factor that I see coming up is, India, for whatever reasons, has always been more comfortable, or has been perceived as being more comfortable dealing with a military regime here, because they know it's a one window kind of sort of thing.
One telephone number.
But now you have this unique situation where possibly for the first time you are going to have a transition from one democratic government to another democratic government in Pakistan. And I think that's going to be a fantastic building block. If there is a smooth transition of power, I think it's going to make it easier for the Indian government to talk to the Pakistani government.
Right. So viewers, with that we come to the end of this discussion, but I'm sure this is not the last word on it, because this is a topic which needs a lot of attention, because 6.5 decades of rancor, hatred, and also taking postures has not helped either India or Pakistan. And as both our participants pointed out, that we owe it to our future generations that we leave them a legacy of peace and prosperity where they can achieve their true potential. And this will not come about by fighting or being jealous of each other or having a trust deficit, but it can only be achieved if we become each other's strength rather than weakness. And for that, we need to move forward with building an aura as well as an era of trust and a faith in our leadership. Of course, the mention of democracy is very heartening, and we hope that it will continue. Thank you so much, Reza, for your kind comments, and Farrukh for your possible out-of-the-box solutions. Viewers, keep watching us, and hope to see you next time, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.